Hello, you are speaking to Ellen Madono from Tokyo. I am presenting these videos because I was very impressed when I took this seminar from Dr. Heiner Fry when he taught me how to use his software called Polarity Analysis, and the meaning behind Polarity Analysis is important. But you can't really understand that meaning if you don't know how homeopathy works in the first place. So the purpose of this video is to give lay people a chance to learn homeopathy without a big medical background, without paying thousands and thousands of dollars for schooling. I learned homeopathy on my own. I've been studying it since 2002, and without any help, like Dr. Fry's Polarity Analysis program, I truly floundered, and I actually got help because there are many excellent webinars on the web. And also by talking to other homeopaths on the internet group Minutus. I think that if you have a background, even a very slight background, but you get the basic idea that you can use polarity analysis, and Dr. Fry actually said that he thought that lay people should be able to use polarity analysis. It's a program that doctors use. What I want from you is feedback, your questions. And I'm going to be making these webinars based on what you ask. I'm not really looking for money or anything, but it's the willingness to answer any question is for a limited time only. Okay, it's while I'm making these videos. Below, I've listed the topics that we're going to be discussing today, and what I'm doing is going from the topic that we began with last time when I talked to you concerning why we are matching symptoms, why that's so important. First of all, we're going to review just slightly how homeopaths think about sickness and how a sickness is affected by the vital force. Then the next topic is, what does the word similar mean? We have a law of homeopathy. It's the single law of homeopathy. There are no other laws. The rest of them are ideas that trends or a kind of a rule of thumb. But this law of cure is what homeopathy is based on. So we're going to begin that discussion. Finally, we're going to go back to the issue of potency, because this is what patients asked about when they saw my video. They asked, why do we have to stir the potency? Why do we have to succuss it again? And why is homeopathy not more exact? They're looking for a more exact medicine, and why isn't that advantageous for homeopathy? And finally, we're going to talk about an example of the law of cure using food poisoning to show you how we match symptoms. So, before I presented this picture, and you have like these circles, like are the body, okay? Like you have a mind, you have a body, you have life force, and all of these are kind of, we're imagining some kind of circles here, okay? And throughout all that, you have a vital force running through it. That's why our mind is awake and alive and able to adjust to all kinds of changes, and so is our body. So as long as this is very whole, we're not going to be sick. We're going to be healthy. But when there's a disease, then somehow the energy of the body, the vital force of the body, the health of the body gets blocked. And we feel this as a kind of a blockage. So we're no longer at ease. We're at dis-ease, okay, when this is blocked. And we said that homeopaths think about the physical body, the emotions, and the mental. And the basic assumption in homeopathy is that the mental is the center. It's the most essential for survival. But you'll find your cases, when you actually go to cases, that all of this moves around, that life force could become very small or it could become very big. And so, this life force could be very big, or the body could be dominating the whole case. In this case, the mind is on top. It's determined. But the body could have most of the symptoms, and the mind could actually be providing very few symptoms. Although, in this case, maybe the mind symptoms are very important. So, anyway, in a real case, how important the physical, emotional, and mental areas are varies greatly, okay? Now, what could cause the vital force to shrink if we have this kind of situation? What causes this kind of, the vital force is, there's less of the vital force, isn't it? You can talk about it as blockage, but it's actually much more, we think much more concretely about this. And one of the biggest reasons why the vital force will shrink is suppression of the vital force through medication. And it's also that you could have emotional suppression. You don't always just have physical suppression. You could feel very guilty all the time. And so your natural energy becomes suppressed. Or you could have a heritage of suppression. That is, it could be that your family has certain use certain drugs, or you that suppress their symptoms, and even though those symptoms don't even appear as diseases in their lives, they die of something else, you could be inheriting that. And then we have ancestors who survive very strong diseases, and even though they survive to reproduce our generation, their diseases could continue to affect us. Very strong diseases like tuberculosis, or sexually produced diseases, or actually homeopaths are finding more and more diseases that are useful because they have this background. And then there's pollution and the social situation. You live in a house where the basement is full of mold or something like that. It's your life condition, or you work in a situation where the feeling of the people around you makes you suppress all of your own feelings. Or the current illness could also cause the vital force to shrink, or suffering through the birth process. So when we look at babies, for example, we usually ask about the mother's, any kind of suffering that the mother endured during pregnancy, shocks, or grief, or medication, illnesses, all these kinds of things. These are, there's a much longer list than this, but I just am trying to give you the basic idea of what we mean by the vital force shrinking, okay? Because that's what we're talking about in disease. Now, apart from that, we're talking about matching the disease symptoms to the current vital force, and matching the potency to the current vital force. So, you're asking about all of these kinds of things and trying to assess how big this vital force is, But this issue of matching sounds very abstract. I mean, is this like matching clothes? You know, if you're wearing a red shirt, then you should be wearing matching pants or something like that. This is actually a very huge question for us because we're matching remedy characteristics to potency and to natural phenomenon. When we look at all these things, these are all this is all natural phenomenon or the spiritual phenomenon, cultural phenomenon around us. But we could think of this as all being natural to us. So we're matching. And then another issue is that the vital force keeps changing. You know, it doesn't stay the same size. I mean, you can improve your vitality many ways, and we're constantly trying to do that. Most people are. We need to distinguish between two words in English. One of them is same, the other one is similar. Of course, they're different. We know they're different, but let's think about this a little more carefully. If we have two species of animals, they kind of look alike. One lives on the land, one lives in the water, but they behave differently, or they have different kinds of structures in their body. If you look at this shell here, this shell and the way it's divided up here are quite similar. You look at the legs here. Now they're quite different, but they're in the same place, coming out from the same part of the body. The face, the eyes, many aspects look similar. Okay, this is similar. These two animals are not the same, but they're similar. And in the same way, we have diseases or disease characteristics that are similar. They're not the same. We're not really trying to find the name of the disease in homeopathy, but we are trying to find out the pattern of the symptoms. Now, I'm going to go back to a physical analogy. It's a little bit different. How does similarity work in the physical world? If you have two children at the park playing on a seesaw, this boy says, "I'm heavier than you are, so I can control this seesaw," basically. And she says, "When it's my turn, I'm going to push off." So she pushes off from here, and he can stay down or do what he wants because he's heavier, right? So, and that the weight of these two children controls the how much the seesaw is going to move. This is a very a physics kind of problem, right? It also depends on how long this one is compared to that one, and you know, you've all had that kind of problem introduced to you at school. And if you look at something like a pinwheel, actually the dynamics of a pinwheel is similar to two seesaws. Like you have a seesaw here and you have a seesaw here, and because something is blowing on it, it turns around in a circle, right? And then you have in the center you have the fulcrum, and it's right at the center. That's if this isn't balanced, this pinwheel is not going to turn very well. If you have wind blowing on the pinwheel, then the next question would be, where, if this wind were just not just the general wind, but if this wind could blow anywhere, where would the wind blow and be the most effective? Just think about it for a second. Would it be more effective here or here or here? Here? Well, that wouldn't do much. And if you lengthen this, for example, well, then he could blow here and it would be okay, right? It would start moving. So we have wind A. A is not going to produce any force at all. B is going to produce a little bit, and C is going to be pretty effective. But I'd like you to see something. The wind is going to have a force here, but if you put the wind over here, the force is going to be very small. If you put it right in the center there, I don't think that there's going to be any force. It really depends on hitting the sail so to speak, like a boat sail of the pinwheel. So this one would be 0 and this would be 0, right? And why am I going into so much detail here? Well, the ones that are similar, they're kind of in the same zone, those are all going to make the pinwheel move. When we're doing homeopathy, we're actually looking for this similarity of force on the pinwheel, or on the pinwheel, on the vital force of the patient. I'm sorry. We're not looking for the identical remedy. These two are identical, right? These two are friends and they look a lot alike. We're looking for similarity. These two are similar, and these two are, probably their mother knows how to tell the difference between them, but on the surface at least they seem to be the same. And the same also works in medicine. You can do something like have vaccinations, and the vaccination will, using the same pathogen as what caused the problem, will prevent the problem from happening, strengthen the body against that problem. But the same is not homeopathy. It's called isopathy. And isopathy is not as strong. It doesn't have as much healing power as similarity does. So we match the remedy potency to the patient. That isn't nearly so important as this one, matching the symptoms of the patient. How do you know what the symptoms of the remedy are? We actually give the remedy to healthy people, and when they take this remedy, a certain percentage of these people react, and they produce symptoms. And we know that these symptoms will also cure the person who is sick and has that problem. This is the first time for me to bring this up, and actually it took me a long time to wrap my head around this because it seemed kind of irrelevant to anything I'd ever seen before, anything I'd ever thought of before. So if you don't get it right away, don't worry. I think that over time I'm kind of repetitive about something that is as important as this, and you'll get it eventually. Okay, now we're gonna start talking about something that is just practical. Okay, if you're talking about potencies, okay, we'll just kind of rest about the matching the remedy to the patient. We're gonna go back to that in a bit, but something that somebody else has gotten back to me about is, well, I don't have this huge box of remedies, and I don't have a lot to choose from. I'm lucky if I have the remedy itself. The rule of thumb is use what you have now and adjust to what you have now. So if you have a pinwheel like this, and this is the size of the pinwheel, this is where you begin. Wherever you have a choice of potencies here, but just begin with what you have, and it will be similar enough if your remedy is matching. Okay, so potency is not that important. Okay, but remedy is really important. And what you do when you're managing a case, and everybody thinks that if they get the right remedy, then the problem's over. But then actually you need to manage the case and figure out what potency to give. But you just begin with what you have, and then you adjust by using the 5-cup method, or diluting your remedies, changing the frequency to strengthen the dose. And another advantage of the 5-cup method is it's a way to overcome the effects of drugs. You can give the remedy very often if you're using the 5-cup method. So if you're a little shaky and you're not sure that your remedy is exactly right, Actually, the your level of being exact is there's a little more forgiveness. Of course, it's not going to work if it's wrong, but if it's close enough, you might. It's very possible that you're going to get by. Now, this question of frequency is something that ordinary doctors think about. It's 2 times a day, 3 times a day, whatever it is. They're very concerned about this. Homeopaths are doing the same thing, but they're thinking about it differently, because the remedy that contains very little of molecules has a very high likelihood of being stronger. It's going to be stronger because more is less. So this basic concept is a little bit different from the allopath. We call an allopath is the traditional doctor kind of drug is allopathy. But they're also worrying about frequency. Now, when you give a remedy, you're succussing it, right, in the bottle. This wet remedy that is in water is in the 6th edition of the Organon, the basic book of where the basic ideas of homeopathy are all written down. And the beauty of doing it in liquid like this is that you don't have to use up all your remedies, and 2, you can keep changing the potency of them by succussing. She's changing the potency by just gently stirring. It's not, you don't need to have this strong succussion. I was taught always to succuss many times and to have a very strong succussion, but in the 5-cup method, that doesn't seem to be the case. Why would you want succussion with each dose? Let's get back to kind of a folksy kind of metaphor. If your body is kind of a Pooh Bear and it gets tired of the same remedy every day, the way you can spruce things up and get your body to pay attention, your vital force to pay attention to the remedy, is to keep on changing it every time you take it. That's why you want to succuss the remedy every time you take it. The basic need for change every day is true in normal life, and it's true for remedies. You just slightly change the pace in order to spark a little more energy in the vital force, okay? And another reason you do this is you want to avoid aggravation. Now, aggravation, for me in the beginning, it was the scariest thing about homeopathy. And part of the problem was that what I thought about aggravation had to do with the general meaning of aggravation. These kinds of meanings, a reaction of anger, aggravated emotions, peevish feelings, sinking feelings, all these negative kinds of things were associated with the term aggravation. But the word aggravation is a very technical term. The person who gets an aggravation may be angry or may have a sinking feeling, but that is not what the definition of an aggravation is. Aggravations are caused by the return of old suppressed symptoms. So your remedy is working, so old suppressed symptoms come back, and the body is now able to take care of those symptoms, and you will start feeling better because your body is no longer having to withstand having those old suppressed symptoms as part of the vital force. Or the remedy you chose didn't match closely enough. This is the typical reason why in the beginning I got aggravations all the time, because my remedies were not matching closely enough. I think if you use the polarity analysis, your remedies are going to match much more closely. I'm just amazed how much better my remedies match these days. another problem is that the remedy may have something in it that you don't normally think of as a problem. And that problem is stimulated to get better, but you actually never noticed it. So it feels like an aggravation because you never noticed it before. Okay, so why we're talking about aggravations? Because we do this beating of the remedy to slightly change the remedy to avoid an aggravation. Of course, the best way to avoid an aggravation is to have very good information about what remedy will work. And I tell you, this polarity analysis gives you much better information than anything I've ever had before. I'm so pleased to have learned polarity analysis for that reason. So I hope now that you definitely feel that same is not the same as similar, right? That these two animals are similar. They're not the same. And when we're talking about sicknesses, symptoms are evidence of pathologies. It's not necessary to know the name of that pathology. What is important to know is what are the symptoms since the person became sick. Basically, you're going to look for what is similar between, not two animals, this is different, between a remedy and the sick person. Okay, so this is not the right image for what you're going to do in homeopathy. Now, why is all this talk not very exact? And we're talking about similar and same, and yet we're talking like 6C, 12C, 30C, 200C, 1000C. Aren't these exact measurements? Actually, they are. The pharmacy prepares the remedies very exactly. You can prepare them yourself. You don't have to be so exact, and still they'll work. They don't work because they are exactly prepared. They work because you match symptoms. So this exactness that you see in the numbers is not reflected in the reality of what cures. What potency to choose is a very relative problem. You choose the potency that you have. What does relative mean? Well, you ask the authority on relativity, right? That's Einstein, right? And he said, when you're courting a nice girl, an hour seems like a second. When you're sitting on a red-hot cinder, a second seems like an hour. That's relativity. Okay, now he said that, and Ellen Madonna, who's not Albert Einstein, can pull these things out of her head. Appropriate potency depends on where you started. Okay, what you have in your pharmacy, the strength of the vital force of the patient, the depth of the illness, the intensity of the pain. These are all going to change. And I think, instead of memorizing all these things, we're going to talk about individual remedies and individual situations where these kinds of issues are important to understand. It's not necessary for you to remember this list. I just want you to know what ballpark we're in when we're talking about this. Another issue is, what is your relationship with the patient? Can this patient take any aggravation at all? Are they too weak or too easily offended? Okay, how quickly does the patient want to heal? And how much time do you have? Now, these are all the situation. This is the situation here. So the choice is all dependent on all kinds of factors. So this very physics-like description of how matching occurs is very relative. These kids could be different weights, and still this seesaw could work. But the basic thing to know is not about potency. The basic thing that you want to know is what is similar, because the more similar your remedy is, the more you're going to affect the problem. The wider the impact is going to be. I mean, if you're just trying to, I jam my finger in the in the car door and I need hypericum, well, just take it really often, and any jamming the finger in the car door will, any kind of injury to those small nerves will be helped by hypericum. You don't have to be, you don't need a wide impact. But if I'm chronically ill, many problems are all occurring, and you want the impact to be wide because I have so many problems when I'm chronically ill. In that case, similarity is really important. You jam your finger in the car door, you don't need to know much, and still you'll be very, very effective. Okay, so that's, again, it's situation dependent relative to the situation. When we talk about similar in homeopathy, we're saying that, you know, you could have more effect by being further out from the center here, but you have to make sure you have a sail there for the wind to catch. And there's a range of similarity. And in homeopathy, there's always a range. I think this should be over here, maybe. And you can be many places along that range. And so that, for that reason, sometimes you don't need to have the exact right remedy. Like there isn't a single one exact right remedy. After you've used many different remedies and then you find one that works, you really feel like, boy, that was the remedy that I needed. And, you know, that can happen. In reality, similar remedies can work. Now, what is the pharmaceutical drug industry's idea of relieving something like food poisoning? Right? You turn off this one and you turn on that chemical process. You have anti-diarrhea, anti-nausea, and these are the characteristic symptoms of food poisoning, right? You do something to the liver. Hopefully you would help the liver, but not always. Sometimes they turn it off. If you've got diarrhea, then you try to block the sewage system, which could not, in some cases, might not be a very good idea. And so I don't think modern doctors try to block your sewage system when you have diarrhea. If you have toxins that need to leave the body, then you usually just let those toxins go out. But if you have food poisoning, you still have poisons, and so you want to somehow antidote those poisons, all right? Now, why can't you just have, you know what the poison is, and therefore you have an antidote for it? But that doesn't work, right? We don't know exactly what the poison is. When you have eaten an old hamburger here that had many bacteria growing in it, which one was the culprit? Which one got into that meat there? Okay, it comes from many different sources and there are different kinds of bacteria. So you want something that will work on the problem, but there isn't going to be just one answer. In this case, in homeopathy, in order to make a remedy, what we do is we match the symptoms, okay? And these are typical kinds of symptoms, food poisoning. So we're looking for a remedy that will match all of those symptoms. Now, if we're just looking at diarrhea, I mean, the list is much, much longer than this. But this is a list of some basic homeopathic remedies that you might have in your home remedy, and that way you could match symptoms. But the problem is there are too many remedies to match here, just for diarrhea. So in the case of normal food poisoning, let's say you ate a spoonful of bacteria, many kinds, and then you got, nausea and vomiting, and you're a sick bunny, right? You're sick. And why not just use the bacteria as your medicine? Well, you don't know which one you can't go in the store and buy that. Maybe you can use your poisonous food to make a remedy, but not many people would feel good about that. So here we come to the basic rule of homeopathy. It's the second time around, and I'm going to keep repeating this because this didn't go in my head very easily. some of you might be a lot smarter than me. Nobody was showing me pictures while they were talking to me. Let's say I have this spoonful of poisonous food, and I get diarrhea, and I get a certain kind of symptoms, right? The Materia Medica is a place where we categorize all of the symptoms of particular remedies. So we use these books to find the remedy that's going to match these symptoms, these ones here. And when there's a match, then healing takes place. Why does it take place? I'm going to leave that for later. We'll talk about it later. Basically, you have a healthy person here, and that healthy person takes a remedy, and they get certain symptoms. Okay? So this is usually done in a school or some kind of group situation where students volunteer to take a remedy to find out what kind of symptoms will be produced by that remedy. Once you know what a group of people are likely to produce in terms of symptoms, you look at the sick person and you look for the same symptom problem, and you use the same remedy, and that same remedy will cure those same symptoms. Okay, this is the basic idea. Why this occurs, we're going to talk about it later, not now. We don't only get it from testing. Up here I talked about testing in a school, or there used to be testing unions who tested the remedies by themselves. You can test them because it's not like drug testing is always done with sick people, but it's healthy people who test in homeopathy, and the reason why only healthy people are used is because those healthy people can afford to have a few symptoms that are not normally their problem. And actually, if you do a lot of this testing, you can become a more healthy person. It's not a bad thing to be doing. You're not going to get actually sick. If you don't, usually one test of the drug is enough. You don't have to keep taking it if you don't keep taking it. If you kept taking it and you were getting bad results, bad aggravations, that could make you sick. But normal people don't do something that's going to make them sick. Another source of evidence about homeopathic remedies is clinical results from homeopathic clinics. So what we do is we rely on our clinicians who see a large number of patients. They catalog symptoms, and these are sent into a central person who makes a huge catalog and keeps track of all that. Even in the current programs, you can find out who said that this symptom works for that problem, kept in great detail, relatively speaking. Another source of information is what all doctors also use, is toxicology, records of poisonings, records of overdosing. We have lots of information on this kind of thing, and this is one of the ways that homeopathic remedies are chosen to be the remedies for certain diseases. You can kind of guess by the toxicological symptoms produced by the real poison, not by taking a remedy. It's not always a poison, but when you take too much of anything, you're going to have some bad symptoms. Even if you take too much salt, you're not going to feel good if you take too much of it. So we have reports of all that over history. Next, we're going to choose, and we're going to have an example of choosing a similar remedy. Now, I'm going to do this very, very roughly, just so you kind of get the idea, and then we'll go over it in greater detail later. Let's say there's food poisoning. Somebody ate something. Of course, there's diarrhea and vomiting. You even know the cause for this. Well, that's nice. When you have a cold, a flu, you get diarrhea and vomiting too, right? For instance, If you need ipecacuanha, which is a homeopathic remedy, you're going to feel worse if you eat this kind of cakes and cookies, and you're going to feel better in open air, and you're going to feel dizzy, and your stomach is going to hurt, and blah, blah, blah. There are all these symptoms, right? And actually this same emetic, which is ipecac syrup, is what is used to cause vomiting. Okay, it's an emetic, and it's used for certain kinds of sicknesses. This is not the homeopathic remedy. This is full strength ipecacuanha. Okay, but it's used in homeopathy as a remedy, and it's where it's been diluted and succusated and all those things that we talked about before, and made into a homeopathic remedy. So these are its symptoms. Conceivably, if you have food poisoning and you have vomiting and diarrhea, one of the things you might think of is ipecacuanha. Well, doesn't he have a tummy ache also? This person has a tummy ache. Food poisoning is pretty distinct. As it happens, arsenicum, which is made from arsenic, is a near specific for food poisoning. Near specific means I'm hedging my bet, because it's possible that there are some food poisonings that won't respond to arsenicum, the remedy arsenicum. Don't take arsenic. That's not what I'm talking about. Take the remedy. You have a very good chance of solving your food poisoning problem. Arsenicum is something that should go in your homeopathic travel pack. Everybody should be carrying it. You know, I have a pack like this. I have lots of packs. I have a pack that I take for exercise, for all the strained ankles and people getting sick from the sun, and different kinds of situations. I have different packets. This is my original box of remedies. And arsenic is not the only near specific that exists in the world. There's a long, long list of them. These are some of them. You have to know what to be looking for. But arnica, if you've got bruises or wounds, it's the first thing you run for. There's, when you don't have time to think, knowing these near specifics is really helpful. I talked before about hypericum being really good for these fine nerves in your hands and fingers on your face. Any kind of injury to these fine nerves will be with hypericum. Phosphorus is for that bright red blood, when there's bright red bleeding. It's not used for, it's more for a wound. It's after an operation, or it wouldn't be used for your menses that are bright red. It's for a wound kind of thing. Apis is for bee stings. Natmur is for quiet kind of grief. There's a kind of grief where the person is yelling and screaming and falling apart that way. And that isn't Natmur. It's this quiet, kind of withdrawn grief. Yeah, there are these near specifics, and arsenicum happens to be one of them. But it isn't easy to choose, because there are other remedies that, you could get mixed up. It's possible to get mixed up. Near specifics, though, pretty much you want to remember these and just have them. All of these remedies are going to be in this kind of a 50 remedy box. I would say just remember these kinds of things. And at the beginning, when I was learning homeopathy, the thought of remembering so many unfamiliar remedies seemed impossible. But now it's like, I don't know the difference between salt and sugar. This is basic knowledge, and I have it. I'll remember for the rest of my life, I'm sure. Okay, thank you for coming, and we are going to go further. My next video is going to be on arsenic itself as a remedy. But I welcome any kind of questions that you can give me to help guide me as to what I need to clarify more, what you really need to know, what kind of burning needs you have. And they don't have to be smart, and you don't have to be at a certain level. You can be somebody who has lots of background and still be asking questions and make plenty of sense. So, just tell me what you need to know and I'll respond. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.